Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. So after all, it seems like Ukraine started the offensive, one more offensive towards the Russian territory in the Belgorod Oblast, not far away from the place where Russia started their offensive towards Kharkiv Oblast of Ukraine. Well, at least we have numerous of the reports from the Russian side about the successful Ukrainian attack in Zhuravlyovka village. Well, the exact place of the fight is more to the north from Zhuravlyovka. By the way guys, this source no reports is awesome. I use it many of the times and I'll put the link for it in the video description just below. So what's the main purpose of this offensive of Ukraine? Well, the idea is simple: to cause Russian forces to retreat from the Kharkiv region. Now Russians would have to regroup their forces to counteract to this offensive, and Ukraine might use this situation to repel the Russian occupiers from its territory. We know that the number of the forces which Russia has in this area is very limited, and they already sent part of their forces from the Kharkiv region to protect Kursk. Actually, for this operation, Ukraine doesn't require to go deep into the Russian territory, or even to penetrate the second Russian defense line. No, Ukraine might just create this hump, causing lots of the distortions for the Russian army, their supplies, and Ukraine might bite just a little from this side. I would say that this Ukrainian offensive is really logical. But again guys, to be 100% honest with you, I'm not sure that it is really happening there right now. Again, as at the very beginning of the Kursk operation, we have reports just from the Russian channels. But actually it's the large wave of reports, so every Russian channel reported about this situation. It means that probably it is true, like it was in the Kursk operation. For now, Ukraine stays calm about the case, which I think is quite logical. The official statements of the Ukrainian command will depend on the outcome of this operation. After all, the fight is reported in the very limited area. So it could be just a small sabotage operation from Ukrainian army, but something is definitely happening out there. The Russian military bloggers say that Ukraine uses lots of the armored vehicles and lots of the army personnel, up to 500 soldiers. Just to understand the numbers, during the first day of the Kursk offensive, Ukraine used just 1,000 soldiers, even a little less than 1,000, and now the number of the Ukrainian soldiers in Kursk region is close to 10,000. Now guys, you know, I wanted to check the 3D map of the region and it seems like there is the huge glitch of it. There is basically a huge wall cliff between Ukraine and Russia. I wish it was in real life. Then Ukraine might bring just lots of the cement tracks and finish this area to the level. Yeah, actually it wasn't like that before, but it's kind of funny glitch. It's like in a Game of Thrones. Well, anyways, with wall or not, but Ukrainian army I think will be successful in the region. And you know, Zhuravlyovka village is kind of separate, so Ukraine might try to encircle it. There is the war obstacle, but it's further than Zhuravlyovka itself. My friends, if you want to support the job that I do on YouTube daily, you may also follow me on Patreon. The link for my Patreon page is available in the video description just below. Thanks for supporting my motivation. Stay awesome. There is also the report from the Russian side that Ukraine moved towards the Shebekina checkpoint. It is also a Belgorod Oblast. I just wonder how is it possible in this case, because this area together with part of Vovchansk is still under control by Russians. Well, maybe Ukraine has decided to move from this area bypassing the Russian army from the north. It could be kind of the smart movement because there is the big water obstacle. This river is big, so potentially Russian forces could be jammed on the Ukrainian territory, trapped you may say. Again, Russia took the part of the forces from this direction as well. They moved those to protect the Kursk Oblast. Well, if this operation is really truthful, Ukraine might get rid of the Russian forces in the northern part of the Kharkiv Oblast. And the Kursk assault operation will help gradually in this scenario. And Russians really write the report saying that there are 200 of the soldiers by Ukrainian side landed in the Hotivka village, also 300 Ukrainian soldiers went to Shebekina. Well, again, the only possible direction I guess is this one. So we'll see how it goes tomorrow. It could be the start of one more big operation by Ukrainian army, or just a limited strike by Ukraine to disturb the Russian logistics or their forces in the region. And in general about the Kursk Oblast, for the last 24 hours I see no movement from the Ukrainian army. Unfortunately or fortunately, I guess that with the current resources this operation is reaching its limits. Because to go further, Ukraine needs to extend the supply lines, and it brings more risks for Ukrainian army in general. Because Russia still has aviation, they have drones, so to expand more and to reach, for example, nuclear power plant, Ukraine just needs to take all of this territory under control with absolutely huge number of the forces. But Ukraine also needs to use the resources to protect Ukrainian front lines. The situation there is kind of not good, I would say, for Ukraine. At first, I speak about the positive news for Ukraine, in the middle, some of the other news, and at the very end, some of the negative news. As usual, it's my storytelling. Well, maybe Ukraine just waits for the situation for the Russian army to deteriorate in Glushkovo district. Just for you to know, those forces are now cut and trapped in the region with quite limited supplies. We know that Russians tried to construct some of the pontoon bridges for their supplies, but those bridges are usually being spotted by Ukraine and targeted by HIMARS. So this is the situation with one of the bridges which were kaboomed by the HIMARS systems. As you may see, it's now downed together with a car, actually. Strange, they didn't mention the car in initial reports. I wonder if it's civilian or the Russian soldiers used it for the transportation. Alright, let's go to the Kursk now. There was the interesting situation for the Russian soldiers of 1009th Brigade. They were encircled in Malaya Lokhnya IK-12 female colony. But somehow today they managed to get out from the Ukrainian encirclement. We even have this photo of those Russians who managed to escape. Yes, sometimes it might happen. I believe that the forces of the Ukrainian army wasn't enough to keep the encirclement, and our guys decided to release those from the place. Guys, remember I showed you this video with the Ukrainian offensive towards the Kursk oblast, and definitely it's kind of hard to make those kind of the videos. You need to analyze every map update, and it's kind of hard to do to track the detailed information of what is happening or what was happening on the front lines. I found this video on Telegram shared by some of the pro-Ukrainian channel, but definitely there is the author for this content, and I was contacted by the author. He said that I didn't put the credits for his job, and definitely he done a great job reviewing this event, and not only, well, maybe I was just too lazy to check the origin of this information. And now I want to tell you about the origin source. It's called Game Watcher YouTube channel. He has many of the videos relative to any sort of the operations of the Ukrainian army or the Russian army. For example, this video shows the Russian offensive towards the Kharkiv simultaneously with the Ukrainian offensive towards Kursk. The author updates the information as the time goes, and he has quite a lot of views, so I do not hesitate to recommend you to check out this channel. I'll put the link for the channel in the video description just below. As for me, I wish I could do this kind of the animation, but I don't have the skills for that. Actually, it's awesome. There was the big press conference of Vladimir Zelensky and some of the other Ukrainian managers who say that still they require the approval from the United States of America to use ATACMS on the Russian military bases. And the current White House administration still hesitates to give that permission. Moreover, Russians now warn the United States of America that they might rethink or revise, it's better to say, their nuclear weaponry policy. Lavrov said that the doctrine of the use of the nuclear weapons by the Russian Federation is being clarified. He spoke about it at the conference with the Yemeni Foreign Ministry. Yemeni, yeah, Houthis. He reported that now they're reviewing this policy, and American officials are very well aware of it. I guess it means the direct threat for Russia if Americans will allow ATACMS to be used on the Russian military bases inside the Russian territory. Russia might use tactical nukes. But again, those are just the words, but some of those words are taken seriously in the cabinets of the White House. I think that the White House Security Advisor Sullivan is behind those fears or concerns that Russia might use nukes. And crossing the Putin's red lines, for example, in the Kursk region, as you see, doesn't help. Well, maybe the White House administration was up to give that permission or thought to give that permission for Ukraine. The Russian intelligence discovered this stuff and they decided to press Washington with threats. But you know what? Ukraine starts to develop its ballistic missile, the analog of the Russian Iskander. The Russian Iskander with a range of 550 kilometers is very effective against many of the Ukrainian targets, especially that they coordinate the strikes with the surveillance drones. So as Zelensky said, Ukraine successfully tested the ballistic missile and potentially it has the range of 500 kilometers. As some of the sources say, and definitely it might help against the Russian military airfields. Because the most important thing is to kick out the Russian aviation superiority. They still have many more of the fighter jets, bombers and so on compared to Ukraine. The rest of the information about the Ukrainian ballistic missile is now classified. The only thing we know that the test launch was completed and it was successful, as it is reported by Ukrainian officials. No journalist has saw that missile, no images have been linked to the internet so far. But after all, I don't think that Ukraine is capable to produce many of those missiles. For this you need quite a lot of facilities, resources, funds. Well, I just give the small chance that it will be a massive production. Even with the simple drone boats Magura, for example, it's not the massive production. Yes, Ukraine built many of those, but still it's not the full-scale military production, and drone is less sophisticated compared to ballistic missile. So after all, I think that Ukraine still needs the ATACMS permission from our allies. Without it, the Russian airfields are just out of reach. In the Russian and pro-Russian segment, they say that Zelensky wants Ukraine to be nuked by the Russian Federation with the approval of the ATACMS missiles to be used on the Russian airfields. I think that it's absolute nonsense and bullshit, because Russia had already opportunities to use their tactical nukes on Ukraine, because many of the Putin's red lines were crossed by Ukraine or even by allies. And the ATACMS permission is not that extraordinary compared to Kursk operation, Kerch Bridge strike, or Moscow ship downing, strikes on the Russian oil facilities, and many Russian bases. As I've told you in my videos, it's not the factor for Putin's regime to use tactical nukes. No, if Putin decides to use those, it will be only his decision. It doesn't matter on external factors. The base for the Ukrainian ballistic missile could be a Grom system, which is definitely built in Ukraine, but I guess just one unit was built. And it's very sophisticated piece of production. My opinion that at maximum Ukraine is capable to build just 2 more of those units. That's it. We have the article about the system in Wikipedia, and you can see this missile. The range of it is 500 kilometers, definitely. The only system which was built took part in one of the parades. It happened before the full-scale war, but there is no evidence that definitely it is in use by Ukrainian armed forces. Potentially, it could be even better than ATACMS with the longer range missiles. But at the same time, this system, as you see, is much bigger compared to the HIMARS system, which is more mobile. Hrom or Harim system, as you may see, may carry 2 of the ballistic missiles. The Russian analog Iskander may carry just a single missile, but this one is kind of powerful. And Russia has the absolute massive production of those systems. In Russia alone, they have 160 units. 160, it's a lot. By the way, Iskander missiles could be equipped with a nuclear warhead, and part of those nuclear missiles were sent to Belarus. And now Belarus, as you may see here, also operate Iskanders. The unknown number has been delivered to their country. Also, Russia sent many of those systems to Algeria, 48 of the launchers, and also to Armenia, 25 units. So that's what we may call a full-scale production of the ballistic missiles and the systems. For the Ukrainian ballistic missile production to get close to that scale is just not possible. Simply not enough sources, resources. That's why Ukraine will have to wait for the permission for ATACMS missiles. To conclude everything about this topic. Guys, I'm telling you the story as it is, without pink ponies or pink glasses, as some say. And yes, I'm quite biased about Ukraine. I have the pro-Ukrainian channel, I'm Ukrainian myself, but here I want to say you the truthful information, the things as they are. And there is absolutely no fairy tale story with this missile or any kind of the magic weaponry which could potentially eliminate the Russian army at once. Even ATACMS missiles, they might harm the Russian army a lot and their aviation too, but after all, Russia still has many of their resources, their army is still big, so this war could take years and years. And sometimes the less sophisticated solution could be a way out. For example, the Ukrainian army is now in need of the heavy caliber mortars. And definitely those help a lot to Ukrainian soldiers on the battleground. But you know, the human psychology is a little different. We're seeking for some sort of the fast and very interesting solution. Like for example with this missile, which will not change a lot. But I know that there will be influencers who will tell you, oh my god, Ukraine invented ballistic missile, so Russia will be absolutely demolished, Ukraine will produce thousands of those, it doesn't need ATACMS any longer, and Russia will be conquered in the coming days. Yes, I would like it to be like that, but unfortunately the real picture is different. But we also have the good news. Ukraine uses lots of the drones to hit many of the Russian objects, military and also the energy infrastructure. For example, this Rostov oil storage is on fire for 10 days already, or maybe even 11. The fire spread recently to those few tanks, and there is the chain reaction started. And as you can see, all this part is now destroyed and unusable. And that definitely matters. Yes, it will not stop Russian army, but it will make the life for the Russian army way more difficult. Now they'll have to search for the alternate fuel supplies because Rostov-on-Don fuel storage was used for the Russian army. Belarus is sending their forces close to Ukrainian border. They even shared those kind of the images, some of the armored vehicles, even tanks. I believe that those are T-64 tanks. As you may see, they're using the railroad to move everything closer to Ukraine. Around 3 days ago, the information was that Belarus sends 3,000 of their troops close to Ukraine, but now this number could be larger. But you know what I see? They do not use the anti-drone protection on their tanks. It means that in general they are not willing to join this new modern battlefield scenario at all. There is a very, very small chance that Belarus will try to attack Ukraine with its own forces. But the self-proclaimed president of Belarus, Lukashenko, said that West pushes him to take the side of Ukraine and to strike Russia hard. Kind of the interesting scenario. Lukashenko, take your chance. This image was filmed in the occupied city of Bakhmut. As you may see, Russia tries to make their bases now underground because they are afraid of the HIMARS strikes. I wonder where exactly this place and what it was used before. I would say it's the perfect variant for any kind of the military base to stay underground secured. But again, they cannot stay there forever. After all, they have to go out directly to the front lines. But as for the base, this location is perfect. Guys, sometimes I get the questions of how long this war might continue. Well, actually, for many more years. The Western media sources say that Ukraine starts to form new brigades for the next year. And there are no any signs of negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. The Russian officials recently told that they don't want to negotiate with Ukraine, and today Zelensky also noted the same, that Ukraine doesn't want to negotiate with Russia. It means that the war will continue for the uncertain period of time, and it doesn't matter who is the United States president. No one is able to stop the war at the present stage. The negotiations will be possible if either Ukraine or Russia will be just exhausted in military. Behind Ukraine there are many of the countries with a large military potential, but Russia also has its own allies like North Korea, partially China, Iran, and it also has its own military production, so the sides are far to be exhausted. And there are also issues for both of the sides. First of all, Russia is under the sanctions, Russia is in lack of the army men, and they'll have to announce a new mobilization, which might destabilize Russia itself. On the other hand, for Ukraine, it's very critical to keep the Western support. So the future of this war depends on who is able to withstand against those issues and who will have more resources to push the confronting side for negotiations in its favor. But after all, I don't think that Russia is truly willing to negotiate. Their goal is to occupy Ukraine. Alright guys, now let's go to review the Ukrainian front lines, and unfortunately Russia moved again, so every day they gain more and more ground. Let's check the distance from Pokrovsk to the front lines, and now it's less than 8 kilometers. 8 kilometers is just 5 miles. 5 miles away from the actual battlefield. Just for you to understand the scale of the Russian offensive, let's go back 1 month ago, 28th of July. So it is today and it is 1 month ago. By that time, Russia was 17 kilometers away from Pokrovsk, 10 kilometers closer to Pokrovsk per 1 month, but at the same time, they're expanding this bridgehead quite a lot, taking all of those villages under control. So those who say that the Russian offensive is not effective, no, it is effective. Yes, they have losses, but this time less compared to the previous attacks. Why is it happening? Well, because Ukraine wasn't really prepared, from what I understood, to defend Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. That range I was telling you about that should have been built over there, well actually it was built, somehow wasn't able to stop the Russian army advancement. And now it all comes to the defense of those settlements themselves. Russia will obviously reach those. For today they almost fully occupied Novgorodivka. Just in 3 days they entered the settlement and fully took it under control, and it is the biggest one if we speak about all of those villages. Guys, I'm reviewing the front lines for a very long time, and I see that Russia has less resistance than usual. As for example, Russia had over here after they took Avdiivka, yes, Ukraine resisted resisted a lot in Avdiivka. Russia lost thousands of their troops out there, but in this stage Ukraine also resisted for a very long time. And now we may speak about one more breakthrough of the Russian army towards Pokrovsk. I've told you about this video filmed in Pokrovsk by one of the Ukrainian soldiers who showed that local workers are planting flowers and some of the trees in the local parks. And you know, all of that costs lots of the funds for the local budget. So the Ukrainian soldier by that time asks, why do you plant flowers in the parks? You should dig trenches. Why do we spend our funds for this nonsense? Guys, I get lots of the accusations for raising these topics about corruption, especially in the local government, so I think it was done for a purpose, maybe by mayor of Pokrovsk or some sort of the local government. They do not concentrate their efforts to protect the city. They concentrate their efforts to waste the funds basically for nothing, to meet Russians with the flowers, actually. That's what our guys are saying, and it is the real picture. This is what is happening. And the Ukrainian society, together with the Ukrainian soldiers, are just mad about it, but we cannot do anything. This is the system as it is. This whole system is damn bad, and yes, I'm gonna tell you about it on my channel as well, sometimes. Just for you to understand the stuff, yes, this video was filmed a long time ago, and by the time Russian forces were a little far away than now, but now the picture is different. There's the high chance for Russians to get into this area. Guys, hopefully you understand my frustration about the case. Well, let's go back to the front line. So Russia now has the assault vector towards south. From what I may see, they occupied Memrik in just a single day and continue their move southbound. There is also the natural obstacle, the small river, but maybe Russians are able to cross it because there are some of the roads with some of the bridges. So maybe their goal is to advance towards Kurakhove direction from the northern side, simultaneously going westbound from Georgievka. But in so they might cut the large group of the Ukrainian army in this place. So Ukraine would have to withdraw the forces and Russia would occupy all of those settlements, including Kurakhove. At least it is their plan from what I may see. Because why should they go to the south right now? Why not to concentrate all of the forces to advance to Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad to take all of those settlements? Instead, they start to split their vector of attack. And also there is the high chance for the Russian army to get Vuhledar under control. Now they try to attack from two of the sides, from this side and also from Pavlovka. In Pavlovka they lost thousands of the forces as well with their useless attack attempts, but now they're coming closer to Vuhledar from the east. And I guess we also have the frontline changes there. Yes, indeed, Russia moved further. The deep state military map shows us this picture, and they're also concerned about Vuhledar. They're saying about two of the Russian attack vectors. Definitely it's like that. This Russian assault also happens very fast. The town of Toretsk, where Russian army moved, I think just a little, yes, yesterday. Today the gray area expanded towards those small households. Yes, those are the small houses and this is the local cemetery. But sometimes, occasionally, we may receive positive news from the front lines also in Ukraine. Ukraine went on a counterattack in Kreminna direction, taking the part of the Serblyansky forest under control back. From what I know, the guys from the 3rd Assault Brigade are in the position and they're very effective. But for now, in general, Russia has the advantage over Ukraine. Unfortunately, especially in Pokrovsk, they're not willing to remove their forces from the eastern Ukraine, and they're sending more reinforcements. According to the latest information, Russia sent 30,000 more soldiers to Pokrovsk direction, so obviously their goal is to advance even more. They want to use the remaining months of the warm weather to achieve as many goals as possible, and their goal is obviously Pokrovsk and all of those settlements, including Kurakhove. Well, hopefully Ukraine will be able to stop the Russian army movement this year. If you look at the picture from this perspective, you will see the territorial gains of the Russian army. They achieved this one this year. But again, let's be positive. Look at the territory of the rest of the Ukraine. So to conquer it, Russia would have to waste many of their armies. That's why I think that this attack from the Russian side is just useless in the long-term perspective. Saying so, I want to remind you, my friends, that your like matters. That's why don't forget to press your like to this video, a huge like. It helps me a lot, really. And as usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.